Hello Dreamers, Eugene the author here, and today we have another exciting new DLC trailer to react to for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I had no idea that this story trailer was going to drop, and I'm super excited. I've really been looking forward to Shadow of the Erdtree, which drops June 21st, and this trailer doesn't have as much to react to. I'm not making a 2-hour video out of this one. This is just my initial thoughts and impressions as I'm going through it. It provides us some interesting insights into where we're going, what we're going to be dealing with, who we're going to be dealing with, and why. I'm not going to spend a lot of preamble on this. We're just going to go ahead and dive right in.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning.
Okay, so right away, there's something that we again have to keep in mind whenever we're talking about Miquella. Miquella the Kind, Miquella the Caring, Miquella the Just. We have to remember that Miquella is an unreliable narrator. All throughout the base game, we have tons of content to tell us Miquella is not to be trusted. You find it a lot in the item descriptions. You can read between the lines of what's said by the various spirits that are around the Halleck tree and the secret path there. Miquella is not to be trusted. So again, when we have this Miquella the Kind, right away I'm like, okay, you gotta grain of salt that.
The seduction and the betrayal.
Okay, so this part I watched over and over again, trying to figure out exactly what we're seeing here. So I'm going to let this go a little bit longer, and then we're going to roll back a bit, and we're going to talk about what we've just seen.
An affair from which gold arose.
Okay, so this is where I want to stop things and go back and take a deeper look at what we're seeing here. When we roll back, the first thing that's a very clear call out is this is Queen Marika, right? She's the only one who has this specific banded bracelet. It's not unlike Mesmer's snake bracelet, but if we go over here and we pull up a shot of Marika, we can see right here. That's a tiny picture. So we can see right here that Marika clearly has these golden bracelets. She's the only character that comes to mind that has these specific bracelets and this telltale gold hair. So right away, it's safe to assume that we're looking at Queen Marika. Now the question is, what is she shoving her hand into? It's squelchy, it's viscous, and she's pulling something out of it. What I think we're looking at is the Godskin swaddling cloth. I believe this is the item that we're taking a look at here. Let's actually, you know what? Let's go straight to Fextra for this. So we've got the Godskin swaddling cloth, sacred cloth of the Godskin apostles made from supple skin sewn together. Successive attacks restore HP. The Gloam-Eyed Queen cradles newborn apostles swaddled in this cloth. Soon they will grow to become the death of the gods. So the question is, who is the Gloam-Eyed Queen? Well, we don't know, but we have a bit of information. So we know a bit about the Gloam-Eyed Queen, we just don't know her identity, but let's take a look at the description here. The Gloam-Eyed Queen was an Empyrean chosen by her own 2 fingers. She cradled newborn Godskin apostles in a swaddling cloth, which we get from the description of the Godskin swaddling cloth, made of supple skin sewn together, and was known for leading said apostles. She wielded the power of destined death via the black flames channeled through her Godslayer's great sword. These are all things that we can get more information on by looking at these particular descriptions. After her defeat at the hands of Malekith, the rune of death was sealed away as desired by Queen Marika in order to create the Golden Order. So the Gloam-Eyed Queen had to fall before Marika's ambitions could begin. This caused the true power of the Godskin apostles' black flame incantations to be lost. Her fate after the fall of the campaign remains a mystery. Right away, what this says to me, the seduction and the betrayal. We have Marika, clearly from the bracelets here, reaching into the Godskin swaddling cloth and retrieving something.
Seduction and the betrayal.
And we've got Marika walking on a disgusting fleshy bed here with a lot of you'll see throughout the trailer a lot of berserk imagery. This is very reminiscent of the nightmare hellscape that Guts and Casca and the rest of the Band of the Hawk find themselves in after Griffith's betrayal.
An affair from which gold arose.
And so again here we have a depiction of what appears to be Marika holding on to these strands that she's turning into what we see to be the rune arcs. We can see right here very clearly, these are very similar images. Maybe Marika's making the first rune arc here. Now, something else that's worth calling out is the body that we're seeing here, right? So Marika is known for betrayal, typically involving something involving love or lust, right? She did it to Horalu, she did it to Renala. Marika's MO is if you're in her way and she doesn't think she can take you in a fight, she's going to seduce you instead and break your heart, break your mind, and steal from you. It's worth noting, especially if you're a queen who's a rival claimant, that might not be your boy, that might be Queen Marika. So it's worth considering from the depiction here, because when we look at the official art for Marika, she clearly has a more feminine form. And so comparing that to what we see here, you know, there's the question raised, did Marika change forms to seduce the Gloam-Eyed Queen, to steal whatever it was she took to create the Golden Order? Or, you know, maybe swapping her identity wasn't necessary at this juncture. It's difficult to say. So here again we have this Lovecraftian apocalyptic, right? Wherever Marika went to enact what she set about doing, she's somewhere that is literally built out of mountains of corpses.
And so too was Shadow born.
Okay, so we've already kind of had this confirmation that the creation of the Erdtree put the previous land in shadow behind it. And so we have further confirmation again that the very act of Marika stealing whatever it was that she stole to create her golden light, her golden order, doing so also created the force that put the previous land into shadow. Now, it's also worth noting the design of this looks a lot like a tree, so it's possible that we're seeing the actual creation of the Erdtree, maybe made from this sea of corpses. A bit hard to say, but this definitely has some tree-like imagery about it. And in the lore of Elden Ring, the cycle of death, as Marika's put it together, is that you return to the Erdtree and you're reborn into a new creation, a new life form from there. And so this idea of the tree itself literally being made out of corpses does kind of line up with that lore.
What followed was a war unseen.
Okay, so we already got confirmation that from the gameplay trailer reveal, those flaming wicker creatures filled with corpses were a horrible war machine that was employed during the battle with the previous denizens that now I think we have reason to believe were employed against the Gloam-Eyed Queen's forces. Okay, so right away, this again looks very similar to me to Griffith's armor. So if we compare this character to Griffith when he's wearing his falcon armor, we can see here everything from the shape of the helmet, the shape of the snout, the filigreed emblem. Can I zoom this out a little bit? Oh, I still zoomed in from before. So we can see this is very reminiscent of the armor that we see this figure wearing, from the cape to the helmet design. Obviously the emblem here is different, but some furtherance of the very strong berserk imagery here.
One that could never be put to song.
And it's worth noting too, I don't think that we've really seen an army of pikemen in Elden Ring before. Like, certainly there are enemies that use pikes, that use spears, but Mesmer is heavily associated with his spear, so it's interesting that his army is led by pikemen as well. And here too we have, on Twitter, Namco Bandai and FromSoft revealed a new boss fight that looks exactly like this figure here. So exactly might be a little bit of an overstatement here. It's difficult to really get a handle on quite what we're seeing. But when we compare this figure, hunched over, wispy hair, some manner of a crown, I don't see the telltale omen markings, but the pose is very similar, and they're wearing what appears to be some manner of royal regalia as well. So there's a few possibilities. You know, if my theory that it is the Gloam-Eyed Queen that we're observing her forces in her kingdom falling in this trailer, which would make sense, right? Like, that was who Marika had to depose to establish her order. The Gloam-Eyed Queen had to fall for anything that Marika did to happen from then on out. So maybe this could be the Gloam-Eyed Queen. You know, why she would be getting impaled on the Capitol steps, you'd have to speculate that. But I do think it's worth noting that there are some strong similarities to the figure that we see here. And we also do have confirmation in the lore that becoming an omen is something that you can essentially almost be infected with, like it's a virus, right? Like, you can become an omen through a variety of means: shared blood, exposure over a period of time, something ambient to your environment. We have multiple cases throughout the game of various creatures becoming omen. So we have that implication, we have that possibility, and to me this figure just looks very similar to what we're seeing here. I mean, we've got a similar raiment as well, so I think we are probably looking at the same figure. Now, whether this is the Gloam-Eyed Queen, whether this is somebody else, that's hard to say, right? There are some fans that are speculating that this is Godwin. Timeline-wise, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't see this being Godwin. Assuming Godwin was even born at this point in time, his war was with the dragons. We know that he endured a human existence, or a humanoid existence, up until Ranni's betrayal. So I don't think the evidence supports this being Godwin.
A purge without...
Okay, so here we get a shot of our boy Mesmer. And this is where the timelines get a little weird, right? Like, this burning city looks like Leyndell, the royal capital. And it is worth noting that you can go into Leyndell and you can find, which is not in the best of shape, and you can find the original Round Table hold. And so, or at least a previous Round Table hold, right? Like, we don't know if it necessarily was the first Round Table, but it has all the hallmarks of having been the first Round Table hold. So it's possible, from the layout and the architecture that we're seeing here, this could be Leyndell burning. It could be a completely different city that just happens to have a extremely similar layout to Leyndell. It's a little hard to say, but Leyndell's not in the best of shape when we get there, so it's possible. But what makes the timeline a little bit confusing here is Mesmer leading this campaign is an adult, right? So, and he has Radagon's signature red hair, which gives us the implication that he's the child of Radagon and Marika. How we have that leap in time between Marika stealing from the Gloam-Eyed Queen to an adult Mesmer able to lead a war, a lot of time has had to go by, right? Because Miquella, as we learned in this trailer, has some strong feelings about what went down here. So it's a little hard to say when this takes place.
Grace or honor.
This is interesting too, just to call out. This is kind of the first time that we've actually seen the real, a real idea of the level of power that these demigods wield, right? Like, we've been told all throughout the game that they're incredibly powerful beings, but this is the first instance that we're actually seeing one of them cut loose, and we get to see how fearsome their power really is. You've got Mesmer's flames all throughout the city.
The tyranny of...
Again, this is very, very reminiscent of Berserk. This is almost shot for shot the moment that Griffith is on his knees and he sells his soul in totality and calls out to the Behelit, the egg of the king, to rend the horrific devastation to his former comrades. Again, Miyazaki is a huge Berserk fan. Miquella may as well be an XP for Griffith, so it's interesting. Whoever this figure is, potentially, so this is somebody kneeling in flames mourning and holding something as they mourn. Again, if the theory that I'm going off of, that is the Gloam-Eyed Queen we're dealing with, is correct, this could be the queen mourning her loss.
Of Mesmer's flame.
So we get another shot of our We get another shot of our omen beast lion boss fight creature being used to devastating effect against somebody, perhaps the person who we just saw kneeling. Nope, okay, so we have Mesmer there. So this is worth considering. So this is clearly a beast that is not on the side of Marika's army, which makes sense, right? Marika, it was this rule established that you could not exist if you were an omen. It's why she hid away Moog and Margot, because the mark of the omen was synonymous with the old world order, the old religious order, and so having an omen creature employed against Mesmer's forces, that tracks. So we just have these mountains of bodies, and Mesmer earning his namesake, Mesmer the Impaler. And this is interesting, right? Because at this point, the Erdtree exists. The Erdtree is established. It's an actual thing in the world. So some great amount of time has passed between the beginning of the trailer and this point in the trailer, which begs the question, right? Like, we don't know how long the natural life cycle is of a demigod in Elden Ring's lore. So we have no way of knowing how much time passed. But again, look at Horalu, look at Renala. Marika has a history of seducing and subduing and controlling and casting aside anybody who is a threat to her power that she can't take in a direct fight. And so it's possible and reasonable to assume that we had a great expanse of time while Marika is building up her Golden Order and building up her forces, that we are just getting to a point that she has the forces and the power amassed to go and wipe out this previous order here. And it's interesting that in addition to choking out the light of this place, it's like the Erdtree is literally sucking up this realm for power.
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything.
Some cool shots of some additional environments that we're going to check out, with what's been confirmed to be Miquella's rune in key places. So theoretically, these are places on Miquella's pilgrimage that were of importance to him for some reason that he marked as part of his journey through this devastated land.
His golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate.
Okay, so there's a few more things to unpack here, right? We already know that Miquella divested his grace to come to the Land of Shadow, which gives the implication that you cannot be marked by Marika's bloodline, Marika's power, Marika's Golden Order, and enter the Land of Shadow. We already knew that Miquella divested his grace to come here, but it's interesting to note here that whatever he was looking for was so important that it wasn't just his grace he divested himself of, right? It was also his power. It was his blinding strength. So whatever was here mattered enough to Miquella that he discarded not just his grace and his nobility, but also his power, theoretically making himself helpless as he enters into this realm. We can only speculate at what could possibly be so enticing. If there's any part of Miquella that's genuinely good or altruistic, we'd like to believe it's his love for Malenia and Godwin. If you go to the Erdtree, we have this image here that is widely in the community believed to be Godwin comforting Miquella and Malenia. We have some pretty strong implications that Miquella was probably close with his older brother, that Godwin is really kind of billed as the only, as good as anybody is in this story, the only good or kind-hearted member of Marika's brood. And so we also have where Miquella was willing to turn against the Golden Order when he found his parents' religion unsatisfactory when it came to curing Melania's curse. Just like Griffith wasn't always the absolutely despicable, disgusting wretch that we see over the course of Berserk, there was a time he was always a narcissist, he was always somebody who would use others to get what he wanted. But there was a time that Griffith was somebody who loved and cared very deeply for his comrades before he became a subhuman monster. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to believe that Miquella was the same way, right? Before he became the manipulative individual who's not to be trusted, there is a world where we can believe he did genuinely love his sister and brother. And if he believed that the answer to freeing Melania from her curse, from the influence of the outer god that's controlling her, the rot deity, there's a place where we can believe that he would love Melania enough to risk everything he has to try to find some way to save her. The other call out here is this confirms something that we already knew. We already knew that Miquella and Saint Trina were synonymous, and there's enough in the lore when you read the descriptions of things like Trina's lilies and certain other objects in the game, that that's the sword of Saint Trina. There's enough that makes it very clear that Miquella is almost certainly Saint Trina. So now we have here that he divested his fate as well, and this is an interesting call out to consider. This here gives us the implication that Miquella was fated to become Saint Trina, and so we have again, color is very important in this series, and so purple, this particular shade of purple and indigo is associated with Saint Trina, is associated with sleep. We already have a description, I brought it up in a previous video, but we already have the description that states that Saint Trina's appearance is gender ambiguous. People can't tell if it's a young girl or a young boy, which again fits in with Miquella. Miquella, like Griffith, is very gender ambiguous, and so we have this confirmation that Miquella's destiny was in some way tied to becoming Saint Trina, and that destiny was put on hold when he divested himself of his grace and his blinding power. Facts worth knowing. It also, there's been a lot of debate around the gender of Saint Trina. This seems to imply that, well, this doesn't really answer that, honestly. It's still up for debate. The reason why I bring this up is Miquella is an anomaly when it comes to Marika's children. Miquella possesses qualities and power from Marika that none of the other of her children have, right? Outside of Godwin, Miquella is the only one to have the golden hair. Miquella is the only one to exhibit Marika's power to manipulate and control other people. And with Saint Trina, Miquella is also the only one to exhibit the ability to transform into another person, and in the case of Marika, to literally change his gender. Now again, this goes back to the ongoing debate, and Miyazaki will typically leave threads to clearly confirm things that he's like, I feel strongly that this is a part of the lore, and then other things he'll leave more ambiguous. But one of the things that he left ambiguous is the question, did Marika simply change her gender to become Radagon when she went after Rennala, or were Marika and Radagon separate entities that for her obsession she forced to be bound into her being, right? For whatever reason, Horalu was not suitable for her ambitions and her machination. It wasn't enough to have somebody that she physically shackled. She was like, you're going to literally become a part of me so I can try to exert a deeper level of control over your action. That's one of the ways to look at it, or it's just a separate identity. But either way, this changing of personhood is something that we only see Marika and Miquella doing. So it's worth, all this is to say, this is another question mark here around the identity of Radagon and Marika, and around what Marika's abilities specifically are.
But we are not deterred.
So this is a figure that we saw at the beginning of the gameplay reveal trailer, posing with their sword over their shoulder by Miquella's symbol. So I don't know if this is the same location. It looks very similar. It's certainly the same character.
We choose to follow.
Okay, so this was interesting to me. We are not deterred, we choose to follow. When we saw the gameplay trailer, I think we all kind of assumed that what we were looking at was just the player character showing off new armor and weapon sets in the game, but this gives us the implication, unless this is just like a crazy multiplayer experience here, we have the implication now that that wasn't us watching our Tarnished show off new weapons and armor, but these may in fact actually be individual NPCs that we're going to meet over the course of the journey, which would track, right? In the base game, we meet NPCs that have really cool armor and weapons that if we unalive them, we can take from those characters, and we can wield their armor, we can wield their weapons. Or in the case of Yura, for example, they are bequeathed to us out of a bond of camaraderie. And so this now gives us the implication that what we were actually seeing was a new cast of characters.
Will you walk with us?
Boom. So that's it. That's the whole trailer. Like I said, not as much to talk about as the previous trailer, but a lot to talk about at the same time, a lot to speculate about. One of the things that I find interesting, right, is Miquella abandoned everything, divested his grace and his strength, but we are not deterred, right? So this can be interpreted two ways, right? This can be interpreted as we are not deterred by what he had to lose to get here, or it could be interpreted as a certain dissatisfaction with his actions and us not being afraid to go farther, right? It could be interpreted either way. Another thing that's worth considering is the beginning of the trailer implies something that I had not actually stopped to think about, right? What you're told in a game is just as important as what you're not told. Throughout the game's lore, we have constant descriptions from spells and items that make it very clear that Miquella was very taken with his father, that he idolized Radagon, he was a strong proponent of Golden Order fundamentalism until he found that the religion could not help his sister. At that juncture, Miquella divested himself from his parents' religion to find another way to save Melania. I had never considered that we're told all the time about Miquella's affection for his father, but to my knowledge, we never have anything that goes into how Miquella felt about Marika. And it's easy to look at their physical similarities and the similarities in their power sets and assume that there was an affinity there also, but what we're not told can tell us just as much as what we are. And so the fact that we don't hear any record about his relationship with his mother, and then we have this trailer telling us very clearly that he had this dissatisfaction, this distaste for the war that was waged here and the actions taken, it's not hard to speculate that Miquella looked at or found out about his mother's history of seduction and betrayal and destruction and discarding people and felt a necessity to do something about that, right? Like, this for the first time makes me think that there may have been some more strife in the Marika Radagon household. So we see pretty clearly that Miquella and Mesmer are on a collision course with one another. We have the implication that Miquella had aught with his mother, so he may be doing more than just discarding Golden Order fundamentalism, and the fact that he made his own tree, the Halleck tree, there's the implication here that maybe Miquella wanted to do more than just step away from Golden Order fundamentalism. We have the strong implication that whether she gender swapped herself to seduce and do it, or whether she just went for it, however that played out, we have the strong implication that Marika seduced the Gloam-Eyed Queen and stole something from her to have the power to create her Golden Order, and then did as she does. It's not enough for Marika to defeat you, she has to completely obliterate you. The one exception to that rule being Rennala, which I talked about in the other video, the idea that Radagon goes out of his way, even though he breaks Rennala's heart and her mind, he goes out of his way to place a creature at the gates to protect her. He leaves her with the power of rebirth. he tries to make her comfortable and make sure that she's cared for in his absence. It is a measure of mercy that we never see Marika exhibit towards anyone that crosses her. And so there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of interesting things to consider. Like I said, these are just my initial impressions. I'm going to be thinking about this a lot more and seeing if there's more to discover. But what do you think? Do you think that I nailed it? Do you think I was way off base? Do you think I'm getting there? Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about the video. So as always, this is Eugene the author saying, you're awesome, be amazing, you already are. Take care, dreamers.